I believe we're officially live. Awesome. So, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday. We have an early session today. I have my new friend Giorgio's here with me today, and we are going to talk astrology. We're going to talk like Lilith astrology. So, I'm really excited for you to work with me here. We tried to set something up a few weeks ago, and then I was having some issues with the tech, and I think this new service is going to work better for us. So, I'm glad that you're here. So I'm gonna give you the stage just to introduce yourself and like your background with astrology. And also I wanted you to share what got you interested in Lilith, because not everybody knows Lilith. So I wondered why, where that came from, and then your group that you grew. So welcome again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So, I have been doing this work since 2020. I actually started getting into astrology through somatic experiencing by working with family trauma. And for family trauma, I actually got into diagnosing people to help them with their problems. So, you could say I'm a problem solver. And how I got into Lilith is actually when I discovered during an interesting time because I was facing a fear in my life, something I was afraid of doing. I was wondering, where is this transit in my astrology?
Okay.
Like it must be somewhere, surely. But I
Gotcha.
couldn't find it. So when I looked into the additional asteroids, the additional objects, I activated Lilith. And lo and behold, Black Moon Lilith transiting was in Gemini at that time, in an exact conjunction with my natal Black Moon Lilith. In the exact conjunction. So when I was like, aha, there you are, found you. And
Yeah.
that's when I got into Lilith and I started studying, like, ooh, how is this connected to facing your fears, facing your emotions, facing something that you're afraid of losing control. And after that, I got into the other Liliths. And when I activated the true Black Moon Lilith 1H3, then I saw that it was an exact conjunction to my sun in my natal chart. So when I was like, aha, this explains some things.
That's pretty deep then for you when you got Lilith connected to your sun. You said, is that a conjunction you said?
It's an exact conjunction. I have it in 13 degrees of Cancer to my 12.44 degrees Cancer Sun.
Okay.
And this is very significant for me because I've had this theme in my life of being trashed, controlled, and kind of abused. Like that's what happens usually. And when I had a lot of Lilith clients over the years, I found that we always had some kind of a rape issue, some kind of other abuse issue where they lost completely control and they had to become like a submissive slave to cope with the environment. So they become extremely passive. So they become the shadow of Lilith, which is Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And Eve is literally like the enslaved feminine. And when I got into that, I started studying more the charts of people, their placements, and I found so many patterns relating to the work I've been doing. You know, how it's all about trauma work, how it's all about healing. So then eventually I decided, well, if I want to make a business, I should name my business to fit what I'm doing. And the best fit was Lilith Astrology. So I created a Lilith Astrology group. And now in this Algo connection, I had 2,000 members joining in a week, which is funny
Amazing.
because this group has been like very low on members for a while, but now it's getting a lot of members. So I can introduce what I know about Lilith to more people because it's been a very deep study for many years. There's not much information online about what Lilith actually represents in the chart, how it works, but because it's so prominent in my native chart and in my clients, I could pick up a lot of information and trying to share it. So maybe we can share it today.
That's interesting. So I have some things for you as you were talking. So yes, I think we all have some childhood trauma and we have some things that happen. And it's interesting being able to find the Lilith. So I can relate to you on that, especially what you were saying for yourself. I'm Cancer Sun as well. And my Lilith is ninth house Gemini. You know how you were saying in the beginning about how it was in the transit in Gemini, and that's when like things connected for you. So when I started learning about Lilith, I don't even know, maybe like a little over a year ago, I was learning about all the planets and astrology. Then I started learning about Lilith and I started to want to know more about what does it mean for me. my Lilith in Gemini. So I was reading, it's like the dark side, right? And like learning about your shadow. So I was learning for me about, in Gemini, it could be like a power, like manipulation with words. And so this could be like if you're in the low vibration. So I know this about myself, that my words are really powerful. I like to speak to others. I like to have impact and influence. But if I, take my power into a negative way, I know my words can be very hurtful. And so I can quickly, because I have a lot of Gemini energy anyway, I have a Gemini stellium. So I know that like if I want to do damage to somebody, it could be instant because of my words. And that's taking my Lilith to the dark side. And I know sometimes if like somebody's going to do something, I have something ready to go, And so I find it fascinating, all the things with Lilith. And I think people don't really know. People are so busy studying, their sun sign or their big three. Maybe they look into some other planets like Mercury, whatever it is. But like, I think they fear planets like, like Pluto. And I think they also fear Lilith, because it's like the shadow. Nobody wants to talk about the shadow, the taboo, right? Like the unsavory things about ourselves. But like I always say, you can't have the light without the dark. And you know this because you've been studying Lilith. So I was curious for you. You said you help clients, in their trauma work and like with Lilith. So tell me, how do you connect it? How do you connect their astrology when you see it on their chart with like the things that they have like repressed, things that are going on in their lives?
Yes, this is a very good question. It's very interesting because I found Lilith unlocks. So if something is locked, like stubborn or stagnant in your life, just like Pluto wants to unlock it.
Mm-hmm.
And Lilith is really what I found about de-armoring. Like a snake that sheds her skin,
Mm-hmm.
de-armors. This is why it's a scorpionic frequency. So if you have it in the chart, there's a part of that aspect where it is, it's very heavily armored. And the shadow side comes out when you try to get out of that armoring, but you feel guilty. You feel ashamed. So guilt, shame complexes are keeping the armor alive.
Yeah.
And if they are not dealt with, they will express in shadow. So it's a repressed part of yourself. And that's exactly what I'm working with. What you said is very important, to shed the light on the shadow, which is what nobody wants to talk about, right?
Right.
Because when we get triggered, we become aware of what part of us is not in alignment, is not fully confident and strengthened. So Lilith strengthens you by stinging you, saying, hey, here's that issue that you have.
Right.
Let's pull it out. And when you pull something out of somebody, you see the ego wants to maintain the structure of what is safe.
Yeah.
So the comfort zone is being touched. So the person tries to defend themselves. They get triggered. And usually when a person tries to defend themselves is when we see shadow dances happening.
Mm-hmm.
So shadow personas come to the forefront. And unfortunately, that is what makes Lilith so difficult to deal with, because you're constantly working with shadow personas in that area of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to break free from the programming, because Lilith is like an opposing force to the shadow of Saturn. Because in the story, she leaves the Garden of Eden behind, so she leaves all the goodies. Because she says, well, if you want me to be under control to get the goodies, no. It's like when you go to a job and you say, I'm going to let the job control me to get the goodies. And Lilith says, no, I'm not having that. So Lilith is a very unapologetic, very individual kind of energy. Like, no, my freedom, that's important.
Right.
I'm a free, independent woman. So nobody can tell me what to do, but it's dangerous, which is why it's often very prominent in the charts of people who have a dangerous kind of personality, or who are called dangerous by others. Like, oh, I don't know what you're going to do. You might be trouble. So the troublemaker, they're going to hurt me, the predator is often projected onto the Lilith person.
Mm-hmm.
People are afraid of what they cannot predict.
That's true.
So why is it unpredictable, this energy? Because it doesn't care about rules, doesn't like rules.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever there's a rule, Lilith says, why? What is the point of this rule? I don't like it.
It sounds like me.
inhibiting my freedom. So it has the nature of Uranus, not only Pluto. And that's what I found like from my study, where Lilith is prominent in the charts of people who they do things on their own.
Yep.
They're alone a lot, like self-isolated. So it is a part of your personality where you feel like you have to do it on your own. There's no support. And you know how support is represented by the mother, the moon. So Lilith is the dark side of the mother, where she refuses to support you. So if it's prominent, like with me in Cancer, conjunction the sun, so I didn't have the emotional support. My identity was not supported. So whenever I was expressing my heart, being myself, boom, blockage, boom, control system. So that boom blockage, boom control system is Lilith. Lilith says, the only way to get out of that is to become the problem. Because the problem means the other person is no longer able to control me. But then there's all these twists, all these distortions, all these fears, like, oh no, if I'm the problem, right? So when the feminine finally follows her own calling, listens to her intuition, there's all this confusion, all this rejection. That's why it represents rejection in the natal chart. Because that shame that you feel is the collective trauma that keeps the feminine down. And because it's been down for so long, you don't even know what the healthy expression of this looks like. So sometimes it can very much come out in distorted ways, where it does become like a lunatic a little bit. You know, like Lilith has the issue of being a bit lunatic sometimes. So that's why it's connecting to the witch archetype. Which in many stories, many fables, many movies, also today, Ivor, she's like, ha ha ha, you know, making like the doomsday prophecy, ha ha, all your children are gonna die. I have this vision, I have seen you die in this horrible scene. Like there was this vision in Game of Thrones where Cersei, the main feminine, strong woman in the story, she goes to this cabin or the hut as a child, and she meets this witch, and this witch says, you will be the queen, but your children will be in shrouds because they're going to die. And then, because Lilith is kind of unapologetic about the bad news, everybody's like, oh, there's something wrong with this person. So it becomes prosecuted. That's why witches always got prosecuted, because they had the remedies and the solutions and the answers that people normally are told this is taboo, this is demonic, this is evil. So today we have all this Christianity still trying to put astrologers and people like me in a box. You know, like if I'm an astrologer, which is a Uranus profession, it's also a profession. Because astrologers even today get still prosecuted. So here in Germany where I live, because I live in Cancer is homeland. So I have nothing to do with Germany. The Germans around me, I tell them I'm an astrologer, they tell me, oh, you were the one who was crazy. I'm like, so I can't even tell people I'm an astrologer, otherwise I get prosecuted. So generally I keep it a bit on the down low here. And most of my clients are from out of the country. I don't actually have any German clients. Any at all.
You work with them virtually is what you're saying? You connect with them that way?
Virtually?
Yeah, like so they don't come to you in person, right? Because you said
I mean, I don't interact with any Germans at all. None. And I've lived here for 28 years. Wow. I do my job here, I work here. I don't interact with them. That is part of the Lilith phenomena. Lilith is rejection. Rejection in Cancer homeland. I'm born here. This land itself rejects me. It rejects what I'm doing. So often I have to keep it secret. I have to just so I don't get into trouble. Because if I do show myself, Lilith on the sun, the identity that is being recognized, if I show, all these things come, all the attacks. And that is why Lilith is so difficult to deal with, because prosecution is the norm with this archetype. That's what it's about. If you're not being prosecuted, you're doing it wrong.
It's good to know. It's good to know. Okay, we have some people that are with us. So I wanted to just make sure we got to the comments. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Let me see. Andrew, thank you. Big fan of the group. Since I'm doing restream, I don't see the comments on the screen, so I just have to look to the side here. Andrew says his Lilith is in Gemini. He feels me on that. Having his Lilith triggered actually started his spiritual awakening. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know if you want to tell about the Gemini, so let's hold that thought. And Frederick, thank you for joining us as well. And Tracy, let me see if there's anybody else, any other comments. I know there's other people that have been on. Not everybody had a comment. So Frederick says that his homeland rejects him as well. And yeah, unfortunately, that's not a great place to be because, like, for us both as Cancers, like that's so important to us. And Frederick says astrology is not for everyone. That is true. Astrology is not for everyone. However, we have been all spreading astrology. All of us have been influencing people and getting people, like even the last year and a half I've been in astrology, I've been seeing more people like getting curious, even if they thought it was related to witchcraft or whatever they thought before, more people are starting to notice like, oh, maybe I should be aware, and they're hearing more about it. So maybe it'll change for you. Maybe you might get people to be receptive. So let's go back to since let's put me on the hot seat. So my Lilith is ninth house. I don't know if I researched ninth house with Lilith so much, but also the Gemini is where I really focus. And I know now ninth house is my belief system. It's my exploration. It's my higher learning and all of that. So if we were to look at me and in terms of my Lilith in that ninth house Gemini, how could I have an issue like in terms of like being triggered, and then what's like the remedy, right? Like we can okay, your Lilith is here. This is like your dark side, and these are like the negative things that could happen. But how do we live it in the best way, right? In our highest vibration? How do we let us like empower us, whether male, female, whoever we are? Because I know you have clients who are probably men too, not just women, so how do we deal with that for me personally, and then just in general, like how do you help people?
So when we have a Lilith placement, let's say we talk about you, how do I help you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have Lilith in the ninth house, I would suggest to understand what is the blockage in the ninth house.
Mm-hmm.
Because Lilith will be a blockage. So whenever you try to do that, you will be rejected. So what are you doing? Well, ninth house activities are, of course, teaching something or learning something, and then going there to take like an adventure, a trip, or to self-develop. It's self-development house.
Mm-hmm.
So if you try to improve yourself by doing something that takes some time, a commitment, like a journey,
Mm-hmm.
there will be somebody to tell you, oh no, that's dangerous, that's crazy, don't do it, don't go there. And if
Oh,
it's in Gemini, that
yeah.
means you're moving around a lot maybe in that area, and you feel like your own mobility could be blocked, like you're not even allowed to express yourself freely, or the way you communicate, there is some kind of a rejection where that people say, oh, what you're saying, what you're teaching, whether it's religion, whether it's spirituality, is like you're being problematic. So it could be also like adversity with religion, because the left wants to reject. That's very important. You have a part of you that wants to reject that spiritual teaching that you believe is wrong. But the moment you speak up, there will be loads of backlash, could be even gossip.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm not a quiet person, so I know I tend to put my views out there, and it hasn't always been received well by people because not everybody believes in spirituality or astrology or tarot and all the things that are like in my world now, like who I am. It doesn't resonate for everybody, and people are fearful. People, they're afraid of the uncertainty, right? And they think that there's something negative, or like if I have my tarot cards with me because I connect the tarot. I actually brought these. Maybe we'll kind of play around with these. Like if I have those out, people suddenly get scared. They're like, "Don't take a card from me. I don't know what that's going to be. Like it's going to like change their future if I take them a card."
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot of fear, and so I have learned. I had a hard lesson last year, and I have learned that I need to be careful, like who I say what to, and I need to like gauge my audience. I need to understand like what company I'm in, and because I could be very free speaking. It's like with all my Gemini energy, and like words just come tumbling out. And then I realize sometimes not everybody can handle those words, and then they get scared. So and yes, and I have had rejection with that too, both with spiritual, other things too, like other self-development things too, for sure. People don't understand this, they don't like it, they feel uncomfortable. Why can't I just do things the way a normal person does? Why can't I have a job the way a normal person does, 9 to 5 and whatever? But that's not me. Like I feel like that Uranus energy, like you said, that's part of Lilith. I do like to break the rules. I do like to do it my way, and not everybody likes that. It makes people nervous, but I feel like I try to embrace that Lilith. So I think that's good. I will ponder it like a little bit more and think about it. I think that's good advice. And I think it's like, I think you probably know this too. Like when you know this about yourself, then it gives you more power. Like you're not hiding it. You're shining a light on it. And you can say, hey, my Lilith is this. Most people on the group, they might not even know their Lilith. It doesn't pull up on a regular astrology chart. You have to like make extra effort.
Yeah, that is important also to mention.
Yeah.
It doesn't even pull up in the regular chart. It tells you something.
Right.
That means the mainstream also rejects the Lilith.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even acknowledge that it's important.
Right. You're right.
This is why I talk so much about asteroids, because I believe they're extremely important, but most people disagree. Most people being the collective at large, so actually not really my clients. My clients love it as I become. But the collective itself says, oh, what are you doing looking at that? I am not going to unlock that. But now more astrologers are getting into the fold. I can see more YouTubers talking about asteroids. Suddenly it's becoming normalized more. But it took a while.
Well, I think there's so much to learn in astrology anyway. It's a very big deep dive. Even if you just focus on the planets, like that's a lot, right? Looking at the planets, looking at the zodiacs, the houses, the interconnection, you could study just that, and there's different systems, right? So there's all of that. And then when you throw the asteroids in, that's like a whole nother thing. But yeah, there's a lot of, like, I did some lives on the group, and we did talk about like Pallas Athena. We did that. We talked about Juno. So we did talk about that. And like different ones, like even like Chiron, it's like all these things, whether it's a dwarf planet or an asteroid. And sometimes there's also like misunderstanding on what something is, and this miscommunication on what something is. But I agree with you. Like there's so much validity to knowing about these other pieces, especially for me, I feel like Pluto is really important, and not everybody focuses on Pluto. And I feel like there's a lot of similarity with like Pluto and like, like the death and the rebirth and all this transformation, all the shadow work with Pluto, and also Lilith, because I think they both kind of show some of this dark side and some of this power. Do you talk about Pluto with your clients too?
Yeah, I usually tell them, well, Pluto is where you are controlling, because that's the swamp in your chart.
Mm-hmm.
Pluto says, here's the stagnation. Here's where you need to grow. Here's where you are being defensive and controlling and rigid. And then when I try to bring a crisis into that area, you are forced to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you are aware of what Pluto is actually trying to achieve, that crisis doesn't have to come, so you can prevent it. It's like Pluto is the crisis prevention system in the chart, if you can work with it.
Okay. It's a good way to think of it.
Yeah, and of course, if you have Lilith, it's very similar, because it's going to be a crisis, but it's going to be about somebody else trying to control you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be about you feeling like you can't be yourself. And that evolution that Pluto is about unlocking those dark aspects of yourself. So I talk also about Pluto a lot, because generally dark aspects is what I focus on. That's why I also focus on the asteroids, the plutonic object of the Kuiper belt, like Nessus. I talk about Pholus. I talk about the other asteroids, Chiron, Sedna, Orcus. Orcus is very important. It's the same size as Pluto, but we don't even talk about it. It has even the same time it takes around the sun. It's exactly the same speed, exactly the same size. Why are we ignoring it exactly? No reason, actually. No reason at all.
I don't know that one. I'm going to have to research that one. The other ones you talked about, I'm familiar.
No reason, no logical reason you will be able to find why these asteroids are being ignored. None. Zero. And that's very interesting, because when I looked into this, I was like, so you're telling me there's more for me to know? and these other people are just being stupid. But of course, because I have Lilith in Gemini too, I'm the problem, right, for pointing that stupidity out. So of course, you can see the Lilith coming out of the communication, because it is pointing out the obvious, that it is in fact stupid to ignore something that is literally blatantly obvious, but we are ignoring it as a collective because we are giving our power away, like that is what Lilith is, what, right, to authority to tell us what is right and wrong. And the Lilith says, I'm going to tell you what's right and wrong because I can feel something is obvious here. It's the instinct in the feminine, the right and wrong function, yes or no, good or bad. And that function, its essence is founded in rejection or acceptance.
Right.
Love or hate. So it often represents also hate in the chart. Yeah, we speak about what we hate. And then people hate us for doing that.
Some powerful themes, right? Stuff people don't want to talk about. And when you talk about trauma, right? Like you talk about trauma, people don't want to talk about that either. They don't feel comfortable talking about all the things with mental health and things that happen. Everybody wants it to be behind closed doors. And then all these different things that happen to us, you know, in childhood, teenage years, even young adult, like that impacts us. It's there. And also like the ancestral trauma too, like over time, you know, like collectively, and our soul has experienced different things. So like we've had some of these same, you know, like very destructive karmic lessons over time. And then, you know, this is why we sometimes have difficulty, even if we're not recognizing in this life, why are certain things happening? It's because of certain things that have happened in the past. So yeah, it's all interesting. Let me see if there's any, I missed some comments here. Let me see what else. Andrew agrees that asteroids play a big part.
Actually, there was one comment. She talked about being a spiritual awakening, Lilith, something.
Uh-huh.
I actually want to comment on that.
Go ahead.
Because Lilith actually does literally represent the Kundalini energy in the body. Represents the energy that rises from the bottom, but only after you go to the bottom. You have to descend all the way down to the deepest, darkest mud. That's why the lotus, which is the Lilith, is Lilith flower growing in the mud, growing in the shade, in the darkness. So that is how it's connected to spiritual awakening.
That's beautiful. I love that. Frederick says he also loves Chiron. Hold on. He says, how do you interpret a Lilith if it is in retrograde? That's a good question.
Okay, so the mean version I don't think can be in retrograde, but the true version can. She's in retrograde all the time. Okay. She's in retrograde maybe in 6 hours from now. And then again another 12 hours. It's because her orbit is erratic. So does it really mean something if it's in retrograde? Difficult to say, because it changes within hours. So to be honest with you, I don't really have an opinion on that. I have not found any data on that.
Okay. It makes sense that the orbit is erratic because I think the nature of the personality, right, the archetype of Lilith is kind of erratic, right? You know, it makes sense. Yeah. Tracy's saying she loves this discussion. It's interesting. I agree. I know I was studying Lilith before I was even studying Pluto. And I'm like, Pluto's like my favorite. I like Pluto. I like Saturn, Lilith, Chiron, the planets that nobody wants to talk about. That's what I love. But I also love to connect talking about trauma. You and I talked about narcissism a little bit. Like we don't have time today to get into that. But I think, you know, how you were talking about the control aspect and like not having control. I think that also ties into the narcissism, which probably is somewhere in the chart related to all this. So like for a future talk, we're definitely going to talk about that too, because I feel like, I don't know how many people and what the percentages are, but I feel like I've come across so many people like in the last few years that have been subject to a person in their life, you know, that was a narcissist, whether it was like a family member, you know, whether it was like in a romantic relationship, a work relationship, a friendship. I've known many, I've been subject to many, and sometimes I didn't even realize I was subject to them. And maybe certain people, maybe we're drawn, like that's the lesson we're supposed to have. And I think that ties into this too. So we will talk about that in the future, because I know you've done like a lot of work with that too. And I know on your community, you also talk about that. So I want to wrap us up because I feel like we could talk forever. But I feel like this is probably good for today. But I wanted people to know like how best to contact you, since you do work with people
Mhm.
like, all over the world. If somebody wants to talk to you for a conversation, or maybe have you help them with their chart, or like this deep trauma work, like kind of this Carl Jung type of work, how can somebody like best get a hold of you? How can they reach you?
So they can best find me as Georgios Verbena on my Facebook.
Okay.
You can also find my YouTube channel, and you can reach me through email because my email is in the description on my channel and on my page.
Okay.
You can
And
always message me on Messenger.
also you have your astrology group that I
Ah,
connect,
yeah.
and
Mhm.
I think I found out about it after, because I think I found you in the astrology talk group like a while back, and then
Mhm.
I found out about your Lilith group. So you also have a very big Facebook group on Lilith, which I think is awesome. It's like so many people are getting interested in that, so I think that's good. So we'll link that again too if anybody wants to like dive deeper. You have a lot of content that you give in your group, and some of it's related to astrology, but some of it's also related to trauma, because there's so much connection with mental health and spirituality. There's like such a tie-in, and I think too, like you said, that spiritual awakening, I feel like there's such a big link to that. Like when things kind of make sense and we have clarity and we understand what we experienced, like that's when we have like this kind of awakening. So I think you're doing awesome work. I learned a lot from you today. I appreciate it. I look forward to like many more conversations, and I appreciate you being on our community and sharing your wisdom. You have a lot of wisdom. You've done like a lot of hard work with all of this, so we appreciate you. And yeah, I'm excited for more people, to get to know you and reach out to you, because I know so many people like they need to work on they have trauma. Like so many people I know, they have things that they need to work on. And I think now it's like as we become adults, we realize what wasn't dealt with before, and it's not too late. Like now is the time that we need to clear it. And I think looking at it from that astrological lens, maybe it's less threatening, than saying I'm going to sit down with a therapist per se. Like, okay, I'm going to sit down with an astrologer. We're going to take a look at my chart, and we'll see like how it connects to my mental health, my mental wellness. That might be an easier sell for some people, that they can look at it that way and like really, go deep with it and do some shadow work and prompts and all of that. So cool. So thank you again for chatting with me today. I appreciate
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Awesome work. We'll keep talking. And thanks everybody for joining live. And if you didn't catch us live and you're watching on replay, awesome. Just feel free to send comments. And I don't think I got to every single comment. We'll come back to it. So thank you guys. And yeah, look up your Lilith. If you don't know your Lilith, this is your homework. Look up your Lilith. And if you need help, reach out to like any one of us. Like we can help you find, Lilith on your chart. You have to do a little bit of work. I think it's on, if you do astro.com, I think you have to go to like extended chart to be able to do it, but you can find it. And it might be a very interesting exploration if you haven't found it before. So
Yeah.
here for that. And Georgios is here. He's on the community. Just reach out to him, write him a message. He's open. He's a fun, cool guy. So I enjoyed our conversation. My fellow Cancer son. I don't think I knew that you were a Cancer son. So
Yes.
all right, sounds good. All right, we'll have a beautiful rest of the day. Thank you for talking with me
Thank you so
today,
much.
enlightening us with your wisdom.